G'day! And today I'm talking about some video games and basically your ownership regarding them. As physical media has slowly disappeared over time, more and more games are now locked down and become live as a service. What live as a service to me means is essentially they're a game that you play and it will constantly evolve over time. With it constantly evolving over time, it's constantly getting hosted on a server that isn't your PC. And at any point of time during the life of that game, the developer may choose, or the publisher may choose, to cancel said live service. What that means for you is basically your game is no longer playable, period. Or it's going to be playable in an extremely limited state compared to where it once was. Where, for example, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, pretty sure when I go to install that, put the disc in, I can play one level in free skate mode. Unless I download the rest of the game with updates, I cannot proceed to play any further. That's almost like a live service game, except it's not quite there. It's a bit of a morphed version, where it is technically an offline game, but it requires a huge update to be able to play said game. So when those servers get turned off in maybe 10, 20 years, that game, unless it's installed on your hard drive already, will cease to function. A live service game is something that's constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly getting updated, and constantly requires an internet connection to be able to play it, even though the vast majority of that game may be a single player element to it. It might be an RPG game where all you do is, or a first person shooter game, where you can fight against the environment and various enemies, not actual people. And eventually that game will get evolved to the point where it no longer resembles what it was at the start when it first launched. Those games are meant to be out and running for years, but the vast majority of them nowadays seem to be failing within the first 3 to 6 months. Even at launch, where they'll be out for a week and everyone's forgotten what that game was, because the game itself wasn't enjoyable. Going back to about the PS2 era behind me, those particular games, you'd buy it, you'd get the disc, you'd have the game, you'd put it in, you'd play it, and you'd enjoy it. And there'll be no patches, there'll be no updates. That game has to be pretty down spot on. Then the PS3 came out where you had an internet connection, and from there you were able to update the game. But the game was majorly completed when you first put the disc in. There may be a small patch, minor bugs fixes. Now it's gone the complete polar opposite, where what's going on there is you buy a game, you put the disc in, it installs 10% of the game, and then you download the remaining 90%. Technically, these games are no longer on the disc. And also, there's plenty of cases now where places are revoking the licenses that you've purchased. So you've bought the game, or so you think you've bought the game, and all of a sudden that game gets rug pulled out from underneath you, and you own nothing. So go back to on the PC world during the PS2 era, games would come out, there'd be modding tools, and with the modding tools you'd be able to change certain things or create custom characters, change the HUD, make new levels, change the physics, whatever you wanted to do, you could do it. The tools were there for you to do. And as it's gone on, as of games slowly evolving into live service games, the modding tools are being increasingly stripped out to the point now where most devices, most games don't have modding tools included, nor do they intend to. Why is that? I would see that from the financial aspect, where if they can charge you $1 for a custom character, a custom skin that's taken a developer half a day to develop, and they can make 50 grand off that, they're going to. Why wouldn't they? I probably would too. Rather than let someone sit there over a weekend, make this custom character and release it freely to the world, and all he's getting is name recognition and the enjoyment of knowing that other people are enjoying his character that he has spent a weekend creating. The other thing with live services is that when they're switched off, they're gone forever. You got all these old games that came out with dedicated server packs that people were able to install on their PCs, servers, whatever they wanted, and from there they could run their own dedicated server that other people or friends could freely join. With live services, everyone is basically matchmaked. It has to talk back to one central location, and if you don't have that central location, you cannot play multiplayer. The thing is though, when these live service games do end, they do not release any form of free dedicated servers for people to be able to continue running instances of their own game. They usually do this for various reasons. It might be that they don't want their intellectual property or various stuff decrypted that may be getting used on another project. So for example, if they release a dedicated server for game A and game B uses a version of that, then that will leave that open to potential exploits and hackers. Because of that, it sucks completely. Some say that they're critiquing or controlling what people you can play with in games with dedicated servers or matchmaking as opposed to dedicated servers. You might join a dedicated server and you find that the host is blatantly cheating. What can you do? Well, you can simply just leave that dedicated server, find the next one, jump in there, make your own, have a friend make one. There's plenty of options. It seems to be that the longer games have been around, the more freedoms they've been able to strip and remove out of those games. You used to be able to mod it, you used to be able to host a dedicated server that you didn't have to pay anyone for, you could just spin it up yourself, you could tweak it and make the game how you would like to have that game. Nowadays this is the game, deal with it, if you don't like it, move on. Or pay for it. I find it absolutely crazy now that single player games are now offering essentially DLC for simple things, either cosmetic or skill upgrades or stat upgrades. The stupid thing I find is when you buy a single player RPG game and it offers you an XP boost. Am I paying not to play this game? I find that absolutely stupid, especially when I see the other aspect of it. They say DLC and microtransactions do not remove the game. If you're going to make your game into a grind, so then I've got to spend money to make it better, I'm not going to pay that, nor am I going to pay for your waste of time. If you're going to make your game grindy and painful and challenging, and it's not the style of game that it is, you've just done that to entice me to spend a further $5 to be able to get a double XP boost or something to that effect. I'm simply not going to waste my time on your trash. I find multiplayer games now usually less fun. You used to be able to pick custom characters, custom colours. Now they're trying to charge for colours. The point of it's gotten ridiculous. Also, going back to the PS2 era, the PS3 era, once companies discovered that they could charge you for multiplayer, I feel like over time, the younger generation didn't even know you didn't actually have to pay for multiplayer on consoles. PS2 had it, PS3 had it. You used to just be able to load up the game, sign into your account, and simply play. When Sony noticed that Microsoft was making a killing out of a monthly subscription for their online play, they jumped in with the PS4, and from there, that's been the status quo. On the PC aspect of things, you simply join the game. PC, you do not play for multiplayer. Weirdly, unless it's an MMO, which they have usually a separate dedicated fan base, so I'm not even really going to go into that at all, as opposed to live games or games as a service. Anyway, this is just a bit of a rant regarding about how they've reduced your freedoms with video games to the point now that you're basically leasing the game until they choose to strip it from your account, never to be able to be played again. Can't tell I'm cynical. Bye.